I'm Ilene Cohn. I'm the director of the United Nations Mine Action Service in New York, and I'm really pleased to welcome you to the 28th International Meeting of Mine Action National Directors and United Nations Advisors. I'm especially pleased to again be co-hosting and co-organizing this meeting with the Geneva International Center for Humanitarian Demining, the GICHD, and in particular with the new leadership of the GICHD, Ambassador Tobias Privitelli, who many of you already know. Together, we extend our sincerest gratitude to the government of Switzerland for the generous support that we continue to receive to be able to convene this meeting, and for, in particular, this fantastic venue. Before we hear from all of our speakers, I'd like to invite you to stand and observe a moment of silence to honor the victims of explosive ordnance, all of the children, the women, the men affected from explosive remnants of war, landmines, IEDs in the communities we serve, our colleagues in the humanitarian community, peacekeepers, our friends and colleagues from the sector, several of whom lost their lives this year and many of whom were injured. Please stand. Let's have one moment of silence. Thank you, everybody. You can take your seats, and I declare the meeting open. To get us started, we're honored to have a video message from the Undersecretary General for Peace Operations, Mr. Jean-Pierre Lacroix. Many of you met him last year when he was here. He's not able to be with us this year, and so he has sent us a message by video. He is the chair at the principals level of the Interagency Coordination Group on Mine Action that brings together all of the United Nations entities that have some element of mine action in their mandates. And you may know that he has been a very, very committed advocate for your work, taking the time to visit a number of programs. He has traveled to visit our programs in Afghanistan. He's visited the teams in Ethiopia. He's gone to Cambodia and seen the work that some of you do there. And he always visits the mine action work underway in the 8 different peacekeeping operations that have mine action mandates. So here is his message.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, bonjour and warm greetings to all of you in Geneva attending the 28th meeting of Mine Action National Directors and UN Advisors. I extend my gratitude to the government of Switzerland for sponsoring this event and commend UNMAS for convening and co-hosting this important meeting with the Geneva International Center for Humanitarian Demining. Your work is transformational, clearing land so that families can return home, schools can reopen, and communities can rebuild. The demand for your expertise intensifies with significant new contamination emerging in Gaza, the Sahel, Sudan, Ukraine, and elsewhere. This comes at a time when available resources are declining, widening the gap between needs and funding. We must work together to address these challenges, and this week's meeting should harness your creative solutions and expertise. Yesterday, I represented DPO and UNMAS at the Secretary General's first meeting of the UN Executive Committee on the topic of UN mine action. Senior UN leaders and heads of UN agencies reiterated the centrality of mine action and committed to working closer together on joint advocacy, planning, and fundraising. Meanwhile, the recently adopted Pact for the Future reinforces many of the priorities at the heart of mine action, from protecting civilians and ensuring humanitarian access, to addressing the devastating impact of explosive weapons in populated areas. It is now up to all of us to support member states as they turn their commitments into concrete actions. I also urge member states to remain fully committed to their political and legal obligations. These are reflected not only in the Pact for the Future and the statement on use of explosive weapons in populated areas, but most importantly in the anti-personnel mine ban and cluster munition conventions. Safe futures start here, with your determination, expertise, and shared purpose. Your meeting is a chance to exchange ideas, explore innovative approaches, and strengthen collaboration. I encourage you to make the most of the depth, knowledge, and experiences of those attending. Let us build stronger partnerships across governments, civil society, and the UN system to ensure that mine action support reaches those who need it most. I wish you a productive and impactful meeting.
Thank you, to Mr. Lacroix. All right, Excellencies, delegates, and colleagues, now I'm going to turn to the Director General of the UN Office in Geneva, Madame Tatiana Valovaya. You know that the UN Office in Geneva is our humanitarian, human rights, and disarmament hub. Ms. Valovaya is the 13th DG of UNOG, the first woman to occupy this position, and she is the Secretary General of the Conference on Disarmament. Madame, you have the floor.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, dear friends, it is a great pleasure to welcome you to International Geneva for the 28th International Meeting of Mine Action National Directors and UN Advisors. I extend my sincere gratitude to the Geneva International Center for Humanitarian Demining and the UN Mine Action Service for organizing this important event in close collaboration with the UN Interagency Coordination Group on Mine Action. I also thank the Geneva International Conference Center for hosting us as we continue to renovate the Palais des Nations under the Strategic Heritage Plan. Mine action remains at the forefront of humanitarian peace and security efforts. Yet, the challenges it faces continue to grow. Ongoing conflicts, evolving weapon technologies, and resource constraints complicate demining efforts. The increasing use of explosive weapons in populated areas has made urban demining more complex, while persistent funding shortages limit clearance operations, explosive ordnance risk education, and victim assistance. Despite these challenges, significant progress has been made. Mine action has evolved from addressing immediate humanitarian needs to becoming an integral part of the Sustainable Development Goals. International partnerships, improved data management, and more efficient land release practices are enhancing community resilience. An important achievement in mine action has been the empowerment of women. Female deminers play a vital role by addressing gender-specific risks, such as hazards near schools, water sources, or other areas frequented by women and children. Their participation also drives economic empowerment and fosters innovation through diverse perspectives. As role models, they inspire future generations in post-conflict societies, advancing equality and community resilience. It is encouraging that more countries report having adopted gender strategies in mine action, and women make up approximately 40% of the sector's workforce, up from 22% only 6 years ago. This achievement is even more significant in the context of global gender equality. In alignment with the Pact for the Future, the United Nations remains firmly committed to institutional gender parity, including at the highest levels of leadership, as reaffirmed by the recent launch of the UN system-wide clarion call on gender equality. The mine action sector is fully aligned with this commitment, with UNMAS Director Cohn and Deputy Director Dunarati Lubis exemplifying the transformative leadership that women can bring. Whether in humanitarian assistance or development, conflict prevention or peace building, the full, equal, meaningful, and safe participation of women is indispensable. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, I wish you a very successful meeting and look forward to welcoming you back to the Palais des Nations once the renovation is complete. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madame Director General. I'm now going to ask my co-host, co-organizer, and new friend, Tobias Privitelli, Ambassador Privitelli, Director of the GICHD, to join me in opening the meeting. Tobias, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ilene. Good morning, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It is a pleasure to welcome you here at the opening of the 28th International Meeting of National Directors and UN Advisors here in Geneva. For me, it's the first time that I participate in NDM, and I'm pleased that I received a warm welcome from the mine action sector. I was really happy about that. Let me start by thanking Ilene Cohn and UNMAS for the excellent co-organization of this event. I think this event is a testimony for the very strong long-term partnership between our two organizations. Let me also thank the government of Switzerland for hosting us today in this conference venue and for their long-term contribution and support of the GICHD. To put it simple, I think we have now three key challenges in our sector. First of all, we see increasing needs for mine action and rising casualty numbers, but also, of course, new conflicts and old ones persisting. This is the political and, say, military context. The second challenge is, of course, IHL. IHL is under threat. We see assaults to the norms established by the conventions, which are a very important framework for our collective action. And the third point is funding. Funding is shrinking. We see unprecedented and sudden funding reductions. Some people told me we should probably not even gather, not even hold an NDM in these difficult times. I think, on the contrary, it is important that we gather and that we exchange openly about the current challenges. We need fresh ideas, we need stronger collaboration to address all these challenges, and we need to keep the focus high on the communities that live with the threat of explosive ordnance. We need to reaffirm our commitment to the norms and standards which frame our action. The theme of this year's NDM, UN, is Safe Futures Start Here. This theme reminds us that the measures that we are discussing today aim to protect communities in the long run from the risks of explosive ordnance. The national mine action authorities are the key actors in these efforts. Localization must be at the heart of the sector's work. Those who are closest to the problem often have the most effective solutions. We must embrace and amplify good practices. This is a platform for collaboration between EO-affected countries. Countries with successful national mine action programs have invaluable experience to share. That's why Ilene and I will also organize a special session with the national directors where they can share peer-to-peer experience tomorrow. The funding challenges. The funding challenges that we face demand innovative financing solutions. We need to explore new partnerships with the private sector. We need to look into impact investment mechanisms, into multi-year flexible funding, which allows us for adaptive programming. We can secure more sustainable resources by diversifying our funding resources and making the case that mine action is an enabler for long-term socio-economic development. Innovation, I think innovation should be present in everything we do and discuss. It is not just about technology, it is about our approaches and methods in general. It also means rethinking our operational models and our institutional structures to make them more agile and inclusive. And I think it is important that we constantly identify and challenge wrong incentives in the sector. Tomorrow, we will launch a strategic steering board of the Innovation Hub on Mine Action, together with our partners. This is a hub which tries to collect data on mine action innovation globally. And we're also intending to hand over an annual innovation award to an interesting innovation project in the sector. A few words about international humanitarian law and human rights principles. The APMBC was not born in a time of peace. It was born as a reaction to severe and long-lasting harm caused by landmines to civilians in many conflicts around the world. The motivation to ban landmines was not a question of their military utility or disutility, but it was because of the human suffering that landmines cause. The APMBC is a concrete manifestation that even war has limits, the very principal grounds in the globally accepted system of international humanitarian law. We need to recall the fundamental reasons why the APMBC came into life in a challenging geopolitical environment. I invite all of you to participate in this discussion in a spirit of enthusiasm, energy, and openness. Let us embrace diverse perspectives and explore alternative solutions. Let us listen and learn. Let us be bold and break down boundaries. And let us harness the power of collaboration. In conclusion, I would like to thank the members of the UN Interagency Coordination Group on Mine Action, all our partners, all those who initiate a long list of interesting side events. Safe future start here with each of us. I'm very much looking forward to all these conversations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Privitelli. Well, to make some remarks in my own behalf, I won't repeat what we all know about the dramatically increasing needs for our work. And of course, the shrinking funding pie is surely going to be a topic that we take with us throughout the 3 days. We have a number of programs that will simply close in different countries. We may lose the Journal of Conventional Weapons Destruction that many of you have published in over the years and probably take for granted as something that will always be available to us. I know that many of our programs and our colleagues are feeling unstable and on shaky ground. So I don't think I can say anything to make that dramatic situation more recognizable to all of you. I do, though, want to come to this topic of IHL under threat. I think we didn't anticipate it last year, and it's quite a profound situation. And I just want to emphasize how I think that mine action, not as a technical sector, but as a sector that focuses on people, is really worth emphasizing. You know, IHL is about protecting people. Human rights law is about protecting people. And while many of us have deeply technical expertise, I do believe it's our primary objective to focus on the humanitarian, human rights, and developmental needs of people. And that's why I really find these defections and threatened defections from the Cluster Munitions Convention, from the Mine Ban Treaty, so really disturbing. I'm sure that there were many in this room who were around when these treaties were being negotiated and kind of felt buoyed by the sense that very wide-held belief was pervasive that these weapons simply couldn't be used in accordance with IHL principles of distinction or proportionality, and the increasing adherence to and implementation of these conventions kind of buoyed us along and formed a fantastic foundation for our work. And yet here we are this year facing defections and a sort of setback of the clock that again raises this issue of military utility of weapons that we had long thought was a kind of non-argument. So I think we really need to bring all of the treaties to bear in our joint advocacy for our foundational documents and then tell the story even more compellingly of how the work that we do benefits real people, prevents harm, advances economic development. We have a recent resolution in the Human Rights Council calling for a report a year from now on the human rights impact of AP mines on the enjoyment of human rights. I think it's an invitation to bring the entire human rights framework and doctrine into what has primarily been our focus on disarmament and IHL. So let's do that. I hope that the discussions that you have over the coming 3 days will be relevant to your work and support a joint spirit of advocacy on behalf of our sector. I think it's incredibly reassuring that you're all even here this year. As Tobias said, he was advised that perhaps it wasn't even appropriate to meet, and yet here we are in, I think, greater numbers than we've ever had. I hope that you'll agree that your priorities are reflected in this agenda. We always do our best to take your comments on board from one year to the next. And with that, let me close and pass the floor to my Assistant Secretary General for Rule of Law and Security Institutions, Alexandre Zouev. You have the floor.
Good morning, bonjour à tout le monde, ici à Genève. Excellencies, colleagues and partners, I am extremely delighted to join you for the 28th International Meeting of Mine Action National Directors and the United Nations Advisors. I thank the government of Switzerland for its engagement and support to this year's meeting. We appreciate the leadership of Switzerland and its unwavering commitment to the mine action. The NDM is co-organized and co-hosted by the United Nations Interagency Coordination Group on Mine Action and the Geneva International Center for Humanitarian Demining, and I am grateful for their tireless efforts in organizing this very important annual event. This year's topic, Safe Futures Start Here, highlights the life-saving nature of our sector. This meeting is truly unique and one of a kind. Over the next few days, you will build strategic partnerships amongst the many mine action partners and will be inspired by one another as you learn about remarkable achievements in very challenging environments, as you just heard from the director of UNMAS. I thank all the donors and supporters that make this inspiring event possible. Mine action enables humanitarian development and peace-building activities. From my personal perspective as Assistant Secretary General for Rule of Law and Security Institutions, I am constantly reminded of the mutually reinforcing and benefiting links between mine action and the other components of my office, including United Nations Police, Justice and Corrections Service, Disarmament, Demobilization and Reintegration Office, and the Security Sector Reform Office. For example, UNMAS colleagues work together with DDR officers to destroy small arms, with the UN police and justice colleagues on post-blast investigations, and with SSR officers as they are training national security sector personnel on mitigating the threat of improvised explosive devices. The contributions run in tandem to bolster the efficiency and effectiveness of United Nations peace operations around the world. And I would like to commend your collaborative spirit and profound achievements and wish you every success in your very important and life-saving work. So at this, I believe I have to switch to the second part. It was my introductory statement, but now I have to introduce the next speaker at this conference, and I do this with great pleasure because it's a very dear friend of mine of many years. And I'm introducing to you Ms. Hannah Tetteh, the Special Representative of the Secretary General of the United Nations for Libya and head of the United Nations Support Mission in Libya, UNSMIL. UNSMIL supports Libyan institutions to clear explosive ordnance and explosive remnants of war from hazardous areas, while protecting civilians from the risk of explosives. SRSG Tetteh was appointed in January this year and brings decades of experience at the national, regional, and international level. She has an extremely important experience in the United Nations, and most recently, she was the special envoy of the Secretary General for the Horn of Africa from 22 to 24, and also as a senior member of the Ghanaian national government, where they served as a Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ghana from 2013 to 2017. Thank you for directing your attention to the screen. And dear Hannah, over to you, please.
Thank you so much, AST Zouev, for your very kind introduction. Good morning, Excellencies, distinguished colleagues and friends. I'm very pleased to be with you this morning at this important gathering, the 28th meeting of National Mine Action Directors and United Nations Advisors is a powerful event in which we share our commitment to making the world safer for communities living under the daily threat of landmines, explosive remnants of war, and improvised explosive devices. This is my first time addressing the NDMUN in my current capacity, and I'd very much hope to be with you in person. However, having recently taken up my duties as the SRSG for Libya and head of UNSMIL, I remain in country to support ongoing nationally led efforts to build unity and advance political dialogue at this time. We come together to renew our joint commitment to protect lives, restore hope, and support people and communities as they rebuild their lives during and after conflict. And we do so at a time when the commitment is being tested in many locations and in many ways. As has already been expressed, it's a time when funding for humanitarian work, including for mine action, is shrinking within the United Nations as well as international and national organizations as we continue to scale down our activities, including activities that could very importantly save lives. Excellencies, colleagues, and friends, being on the ground in Libya has allowed me to see firsthand how peace, stability, and development not only depend on political will, but also on creating safe conditions for civilians that the mine action sector helps to make possible. And I would very much like to pay tribute to my colleagues in UNSMIL who do this important work. Like many post-conflict countries, Libya is dealing with the deadly legacy of war. Over a decade of violence has left behind landmines, improvised explosive devices, and unexploded ordnances. These hazards continue to pose a real threat to civilians, prevent displaced families from returning home, slow down vital reconstruction and service delivery. And sometimes, unfortunately, we have to deal with the same situation in the same location because of the activities of armed groups. Numbers can feel cold, but behind every statistic lies a face, a name, and a story. From May 2020 to early 2025, Libya has witnessed the devastating toll of the explosive remnants of war. With each number, we have a life forever changed. Between 2020 and 2021, there were 151 recorded accidents, resulting in 300 victims, including 175 injuries and 125 unnecessary deaths. In 2022, the toll continued, with 20 accidents and 58 victims. A brief decline in 2023 brought 13 accidents and 19 victims, but the tragedy deepened in 2024, with 19 accidents and 43 victims, including 17 who were injured and 26 who unfortunately lost their lives. Already in 2025, we've had a child die in a recorded ERW accident. It's not only a technical challenge, but a humanitarian issue, a political issue, and a development issue. Because when the fighting stops, these explosive remnants of war remain, lingering in fields, on pathways and roadways, threatening the lives of innocent civilians, refugees, and affecting the livelihoods of Libyan communities. I would like to commend the dedicated and sustained work of the Libyan Mine Action Center, the Military Engineering Department, the National Safety Authority, and the Forensic Police. Their teams are working every day, often in difficult and dangerous conditions, to reduce risks and make communities safer. Excellencies, colleagues, and friends, the United Nations through UNMAS is proud to support this work. Together with Libyan institutions and our international partners, we continue to support survey and clearance operations, provide risk education, and strengthen national capacities. These efforts save lives and are helping to restore trust in Libyan institutions and public services. But still, the challenges remain significant. What is needed now is greater coordination among national actors, a clear national strategy, and sustainable and predictable funding, which we have noted is indeed our current challenge. The establishment of a unified authority with a dedicated budget for mine action would be an important step towards long-term progress. Mine action is not just about clearing land, it's allowing life to return to normal. Every mine removed makes space for a school to reopen, for families to rebuild their homes, for farmers to return to their land. And this work is fundamental to peace building and recovery. But Libya is not alone in this struggle. Across the world, in Gaza, in Sudan, in Afghanistan, in Ukraine, and other countries, millions of people continue to live in fear because of explosive hazards. Clearance and risk education must continue to reduce the risk from explosive contamination to a level where people can live safely, in which economic, social, and health development can occur. In these countries, as in Libya, mine action is more than just a safety measure. It is a foundation for peace and stability. It is also deeply political, as building peace means removing fear, restoring trust, and giving the people the confidence to return and rebuild. I have the deepest respect for all of you who carry out the technical aspects of this important work. My role, and the role of many of us in leadership, is to make sure your work has the support, coordination, and the resources required to succeed. That's why this year's theme, that's why the theme for this year's meeting, Safe Futures Start Here, is also very fitting. When we invest in mine action, we are investing in safety, human dignity, and the long-term recovery of societies. Keeping mine action high on the global agenda by continuing to link it clearly to peace building, security, humanitarian access, human rights, and equitable development is incredibly important. We must ensure that it is integrated into political processes, peace agreements, and post-conflict transitions. And above all, we must ensure that national ownership remains at the heart of every mine action response. In Libya and elsewhere, this means putting affected communities first. It means listening to their needs, working with local authorities, and supporting national institutions. Excellencies, colleagues, and friends, let's not forget what is at stake. As we look ahead, not just in Libya, but globally, I ask you to join me in reaffirming our collective commitment to a safer world, free of the threat of landmines and explosive ordnance, and encourage our collective advocacy to ensure that momentum is not lost in our efforts to help communities recover from conflict in safety without the destructive impact of unexploded ordnances destroying people's lives. Safe futures start here, with our decision, with our cooperation, and our shared belief that mine action is essential and that safety is a human right. I thank you so very much for your kind invitation, and I wish you successful deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you, SRSG. Wonderful to see you. Well, that concludes our opening session. So thank you very, very much for being here and for contributing and participating these coming 3 days. I'm now just going to ask that the panelists for the first plenary start to come up. And I'm going to introduce, in case you didn't already meet and don't already know, Lauren Cobham. Lauren is going to be trying to keep us on track. So when she's calling us to order and trying to bring you all back into the room for the plenary sessions, please heed the call and we'll stick to the schedule. And we're moving to plenary 1. Thank you very much, everybody.